We all know farming has changed. With new and ever-advancing technologies, American farming and ranching doesn't look like it used to. Across the country, in operations big and small, we're making choices that help keep agriculture sustainable for your grandchildren and ours. Our values are the same. We grow crops and raise livestock and poultry so you can raise families that are happy and healthy. And thanks to innovations in agriculture, we're feeding more people with fewer resources. With innovation come questions, and we're here with answers. So let's talk. From basic terminology so you can speak the same language and ask the right questions, to complex topics like environmental impact and GMOs. Food dialogues exist to provide answers to your questions about food, straight from the people who produce it. So get to know who we are, how we work, and why we love what we do.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, the big news didn't necessarily happen in Washington, D.C. If you're looking to follow ag policy news, really all happened in Nashville, that being the site of the American Farm Bureau Federation's annual convention, where, for the first time in 25 years, the President of the United States addressed members and delivered remarks to the American Farm Bureau Federation crowd. About 4,700 there heard his remarks. And
right, it was just an incredible scene. There were Farm Bureau members started lining up at 8 o'clock in the morning, well before 9 o'clock. Wasn't a lot of attendance at their morning sessions for a speech that was scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then the Secretary spoke before him. Huge interest, and I don't think for some sporting events I've seen that much interest and that many people willing to wait in line for so long.
So to the surprise of very few who are following ag policy, President Donald Trump received very warmly at the American Farm Bureau Federation crowd.
Certainly did.
Several very big applause lines mentioning things like let the estate tax, a lot of the tax revisions, the farm bill, pushing for a farm bill to be passed on time, name-checking crop insurance and throwing his support behind that. All very welcome points for Farm Bureau members. Phil, for you, what do you think were some of the big takeaways from President Trump's address, in particular when we're thinking about things that are going to influence ag policy throughout 2018?
Right, well, he didn't make a lot of news in terms of, I think, the biggest issue, obviously the biggest concern out there in farm country, and was all of last year, and that was on NAFTA and the president's threat to withdraw from NAFTA. Certainly he was in the process of renegotiating it. He stopped short of saying anything about not withdrawing. He did commit to getting farmers what he said was a better deal. He promised to get a better deal than what they have now. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of conversation leading up to the speech about what will be said, what won't be said. Ultimately, his remarks in that speech and in an exclusive interview with Agri-Pulse prior to that were very supportive of a lot of big priority points for Farm Bureau and a lot of other ag policy groups. They had to have liked what they heard. Right, and they did. And the other thing that's important to point out is he didn't say a lot about it, but there was a line in the speech calling on Congress to pass a new farm bill this year and to make sure it included crop insurance. That was important mostly because it was, he recognized the significance of crop insurance. Crop insurance is permanently authorized. It doesn't need a farm bill to pass for the program to go on. It's a nuance. It's probably
right.
It's very significant, but it's something that's probably not known except by most policy wonks here in D.C. But he did talk about crop insurance, he did talk about the Farm Bill. That was put in the speech very deliberately for this audience, and it was very well received.
Also, if you're looking for some other details on the Farm Bureau speech, some other things that happened in terms of their policy setting priorities, things of that nature, I'd encourage you to check out agripulse.com. Plenty of coverage there. Don't want to dive too deep into the minutia here for this particular video segment. But we do want to mention something that's going on that, as Phil mentioned before we press record here on a Thursday afternoon, is consuming Washington, D.C. That right now is, of course, looking to avoid a government shutdown at the end of next week. That is when current government funding expires. Phil, what should we be looking for in terms of discussions in the next week as lawmakers look to avoid that government shutdown?
Well, there's no question there won't be a shutdown. They will pass another continuing resolution next week to keep the government going, probably into February, possibly even to President's Day. Length of that hasn't been released or announced publicly. However, what's really important is what's going on behind the scenes. There's very little that much going on the floor of the House or the Senate, but there are a lot of important negotiations, not only on the spending caps for this year, potentially into 2019 as well. That's one thing. And then what's going to be wrapped up to this bill. This could be the biggest, probably will be the biggest, most important bill of this year. And certainly since the tax cut bill of last year. Just to tick off the list of items, there's the cotton and dairy farm bill provisions that were passed by the House. They're not acceptable to the Senate, but there's almost certainly going to be something on those to probably create some new funding for the farm bill. There's disaster assistance for hurricane producers who lost crops to the hurricanes. And there's a new issue that's cropped up since the tax bill, and that's with the tax deduction that goes to farmer cooperatives and grain elevators. Many grain companies feeling like this is very unfair and is going to give a big tax advantage to producers who are members of co-ops and sell to co-ops rather than to other companies, either publicly held or private companies and elevators.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of things to watch here in the next week as Congress looks to avoid the government shutdown. As Phil said, it's not expected that will happen, but what are the policy positions that will be folded into the legislation that makes that government shutdown something that is avoided? And so that's something that we're going to be following here on agripulse.com throughout the next week, and we hope you will join us for our coverage on that. Do want to just note to the fact that we are shooting on location here in Washington, D.C., and for several minutes of this video, it felt like we were looking directly into the sun, as it appears we are now because the sun's coming back up. So a lot of different lighting scenarios that we appreciate you working through with us throughout the course of this video as we look forward to more Agri-Pulse coverage here throughout 2018. I know this is the first week in review video of the new year, and we appreciate you guys stopping by for it.
Yeah, I want to add too, if you've not had a chance to watch the video of our exclusive interview with President Trump in Nashville on Monday, I strongly encourage you to go to agripulse.com and watch it. President Sarah Wyatt got the president on record on trade and the farm bill, crop insurance, and immigration. So you can watch his answers to those tough questions, and he answered them.
Yeah, as Phil mentioned, a lot of good content in there for you to look out, especially if you're looking for presidential positions on matters that matter to you in your operation. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.